Hello, hello, hello. I'm your host, Ezra Rivers, and welcome back to an all new episode of The Final Pod, where we talk all things horror all the time. Today, we delve into the slasher series that we all know and love. Yes, we're here to talk The Shape, or as most of you know him as, Michael Myers. The Halloween franchise has been around since 1978 with the emergence of John Carpenter's Halloween, and horror has been changed ever since. The franchise spans over 13 movies with one full reboot by Rob Zombie, which I personally love. Well, the first movie at least. The second one was kind of iffy for me. And the more recent trilogy by David Gordon Green, which has been met with both high and very low praise. But since Halloween ends, there's been radio silence on where the franchise will go or be born again, until now. Recently, there was a bidding war between A24 and production company Miramax, who ultimately won the bidding. They've officially acquired the rights to the Halloween saga, and they have big plans in store. But before that, let's talk Jamie Lee and Laurie Strode, the final girl who started it all. Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, has donned the title of Final Girl way before it was a thing. She completely embodied the role of Laurie Strode and has brought such a uniqueness to her that wasn't sought out in horror yet. She was shy, but she wasn't a punk, and she would do anything to keep the ones she loved safe. She's the ultimate Final Girl in many people's minds. I mean, for me, for sure, she's like my favorite, up there with Sidney Prescott. I don't really think you can top the OG Final Girls. For many people, including myself, she is the Final Girl, the first Final Girl we were introduced to as kids. Over the years, Jamie Lee Curtis has come back to play Laurie, and actually be killed off as Laurie, only for her fate to resurface 40 years later. She put on the blue shirt and ready to face Michael all over again, and this time, quick little spoiler alert, for anyone who hasn't seen the new trilogy, she won. Now, with the talks of Miramax acquiring the rights and kind of pushing the series in a new direction, I can't help but wonder, will we be introduced to a new Laurie? A reboot? This begs the question, if the OG Laurie story is told and finished, will we get a new one? Or will Laurie's legacy carry on to the television shows in the Halloween cinematic universe that's in production? I'm curious to know if the series and the new movies will go in the reboot direction. Because if that's the case, will it even be based around Laurie? Are we getting rid of the new trilogy and redoing the entire franchise? We, point blank, do not know. But hopefully Miramax will release more information based on the hype from the bidding war. As I mentioned, A24 and Miramax were in a bidding war to win the rights of the Halloween franchise. I want to say, unfortunately, A24 lost because I think that their horror movies have really become a staple in the horror community. I mean, we have movies like Midsummer and Hereditary, and, you know, for me, A24 kind of goes into a direction that other horror production companies have been kind of scared to go into, which is more of the psychological horror and the horror that makes your skin crawl, let's say. I really was hoping that A24 was going to get the rights for the simple fact that I would love to see Michael take a darker turn. I mean, if we could even get him that way. Like, we've been introduced to him as this savage monster and this kind of villain who never dies. I wanted to see something more psychological, maybe get into the mindset of him more rather than just it being mentioned that he was disturbed or deranged. I don't know. I was really holding out for A24, and I truly thought that they were going to be the ones to win. I think it would have given a fresh take on Michael Myers, and I think it really would have solidified him in a new form, where I feel like Miramax is kind of just going to do the same thing over and over again. I mean, regardless, I'm excited to see what happens. This brings me to the next topic, and it's a question that I've asked myself over and over again for numerous franchises, such as Scream, A Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, The Exorcist, even The Strangers reboot that's coming out. Should Hollywood simply let Michael Myers die and give us a new big bad? And yes, that's a shout out to Buffy, Big Bad. um, I'm not sure if Hollywood has any original ideas anymore. And I know maybe a lot of people are going to disagree because we love these horror icons, we love these villains, and we've grown up with them, right? And there's been a time where especially people in the horror community have really leaned into these franchises and these movies to feel nostalgic and to remind themselves of what they loved about horror to begin with by going back and watching the originals. I know for myself, I can watch the 1978 Halloween over and over and over again. It really doesn't stop me from liking any other horror movies or create a kind of an imbalance. I really think it brings me back to my childhood, and it brings me back to a time where movies didn't rely on the heavy CGI or the blood that was shown through a kill. And why I say that is because if you know the original movie, there's probably like 2 drops of blood in that movie. It really relied on the intensity and the stalking aspect of it, to where before we got to the second movie and we had this revelation of Michael being Laurie's brother, it was just a scary movie about a man in a mask that was going around his hometown and really causing chaos. And I think there's something really terrifying in the thought of this suburban town being, safe and secure, and one night an old resident just snapping and creating this atmosphere where when we get to the new trilogy for David Gordon Green, which picks up 40 years after the original movie, the town is traumatized and everyone is scared to go out at night. And I think there's something really terrifying about that. I mean, I'm a city boy, right? So I don't know the feel of a small town or living in a house. But I could only imagine that it would be completely unnerving to have this person who grew up in the town just come back and start attacking everyone that stood in his way of getting to his baby sister. Which I will say, I'm very glad that David Gordon Green kind of erased the timeline. I was never a fan of Laurie and Michael being related. I think it removed the fear of everything and it humanized, in a sense, the villain. And I, for one, hate. I will probably get backlash for it, but I hate when we humanize a villain. I think the bad guy is a bad guy and should stay a bad guy. I think when we start giving him heart and conscience and all these things that make regular people not serial killers, it removes the fear. I think when you have this person who just lost it and there's no real backing to it, I think that makes it scarier. That's just me, though. And going back to my question about Hollywood letting Michael Myers die and giving us something new, I know, trust me, I know the love for Michael Myers runs very deep. I have it too. But it feels like we're getting the same stuff over and over, right? We're getting reboot after Lego sequel. Like, I can't bear to think, should he just stay dead? There are so many interesting and talented writers out there that go unrecognized because their ideas simply don't fit the mainstream ideas of what's already been done. But isn't that what we need? I think we're at a point in culture and in movies where we need new ideas and we need new villains. I know I'm walking on very thin ice of being canceled already, but come on. You're telling me there's not one person in Hollywood who can give us a new babysitter stalker with a new perspective and a new voice rather than just rebooting Michael Myers? I mean, if anyone wants to hire me, I can definitely write up something kind of scary, but it's a really tough topic and it's a really tough question to ask because the series and the franchise and Michael Myers alone is so beloved by millions of people all over the world. And we want to see him again and over, but if we're going to do it, then we got to do it fresh. and this takes me back to my first episode about the Scream franchise. We're just getting the constant stuff over and over again. It's becoming boring. It's becoming very cliche. And I think there has to be a time where we can either let go of the movies that have come before us and kind of just keep them in our hearts, in the sense of, you want to watch a Halloween movie? There's about 13 of them that you can watch. Go back and watch the OGs. Like, I don't think we need to constantly bring back a series that has died. And I don't mean the series has died, but our villain is dead, right? With the new trilogy that came out 40 years after the original, we have fully seen Michael Myers be completely dismembered. Like, Laurie threw his body, the town threw his body into, it wasn't a wood chipper, a metal grinder. I don't really know what it's called. I'm not the constructive person or whatever you call them to know what he was thrown into. But I will say that I think Michael Myers should stay dead. I know, it's terrible, but I really do think it's time for us to move on. I think there are so many different ideas and talented people out in the world that can easily give us a new story with a new mask or a new villain who can still fit the essence of what made Halloween scary, but in a new light, and it not be Michael Myers. Okay, I got a little bit off topic, but I mentioned the bidding war between A24 and Miramax, and kind of what does this mean for the franchise moving forward? Ultimately, this means that, one, the franchise gets a reboot, an expanded universe that is supposed to start with a TV series, which I'm extremely interested in, only because I never thought to make Halloween a series. You know, the movies generally take place in one night on Halloween night, and so it'll be interesting to see how it's panned out over a multi-episode arc, and then to see where it goes on. So as a Halloween fan, I'm definitely intrigued, to say the least. But as I said, I do also have this side that's just like, give it up, you know? Like, let's just let it be. It started and it ended with Laurie, as it should have, and cool. But now let's focus on new ideas. Or even just other series that could use a revamp. I'd love to see a reimagining of, let's say, I don't know, 13 Ghosts. Great movie, obviously, staple, but wouldn't a reboot be dope? Added CGI, extra makeup techniques that have been learned over the years. You know, I just feel like the slashers are being slashed out. They're being very drilled into the ground when it comes to ideas and new movies coming out. It just feels a little played out. Trancas and Miramax produced the Blumhouse reboots, and I'm honestly interested to see the fan reaction when details start coming out about actual projects in the works. I know for a fact it's going to be a top priority with Miramax. I'm just curious to see not only how everyone feels, being that Miramax had hands already in the David Gordon Green trilogy, which people seem to not really like. It was met with kind of both praise and a lot of negativity. I think the first movie, which I believe came out in 2018, was met with a lot of praise. I think it was fun to see Jamie Lee Curtis come back, to be in Haddonfield again all over with her family and introducing her daughter Karen, which I'm going to go off on a tangent right now only because I have to. Karen's death and Halloween Ends was so poorly done. You have this woman who's now a grown woman who was raised by Laurie Strode, and we see that she was basically trained her entire life to prepare for the night of Michael's return, in case it happened, right? Even though she didn't believe it, and even though she kind of felt her mom took her childhood from her, which she did. But it was in preparation for something that she didn't really believe in. And still, you have all these years of training and seclusion, and your mother built a fort out of her home and really drove the nail into the coffin of, this is what we need to be prepared for. I know he's coming back. He will be back one day. And then it happens, and she's killed in under 2.5 seconds. Like, I'm a very big believer in, if you're going to build up a character storyline and you're going to build up an arc to something so grand of, she lost her childhood, she didn't have any friends, her mother basically built a soldier out of her. She learned how to shoot a gun when she was like, what, 6? And then the one moment she had to like defend herself, she went down too easy for me. And I know the movie was not about Karen. It was very much about Laurie and even Allison, but we were introduced to such a strong character on paper. And then, I don't know, it felt really flat for me. I mean, like I said, she was cut off from the world. Her mother lost her daughter in the process. She grows up with this resentment towards Laurie, and even though she understood why it happened at the end of the first movie, when Michael actually does return and she sees it firsthand, and she's able to shoot once at him and kind of get herself out of the home and really save her family, it was really, really sad. It was really sad to see Karen go out so easily. I would have loved to see her face off with Michael. I mean, even Allison got to face off with him, which one of the best scenes in my opinion, when they're in the hallway and he's attacking them and Michael hits the gun out of her hand and she quickly pulls out a knife and begins to stab him. Like, that's what I expected from Karen. I expected Karen to give us a little more than screaming at a window. I also didn't understand why they kind of made it seem like the evil was trying to enter her when she was standing out the window, and then kind of just died. It was really, really anticlimactic for me. Okay, back to the topic. Needless to say, it's really just a studio behind the project. So, it eventually comes down to the director, the writer, and producer, and the actors, I personally feel. For me, I enjoy the David Gordon Green franchise. We love to see Jamie Lee Curtis. Well, I love to see Jamie Lee Curtis, and I love her in the role of Laurie Strode. I think she really owns it. I think she's able to bring such a sweet character into our hearts and into our lives, and then flip it on its head, right? I personally did not think that we were going to get this badass, gunslinging, knowing exactly what to do kind of Laurie. I thought she would be brought back to her trauma and her trauma would kind of take over, but I was very pleasantly surprised that David Gordon Green did not go that route and really gave the story a breath of light and a breath of fresh air that I didn't know we were going to get. I think it paid beautiful fan service to the OG fans, regardless of everything. And I really am excited to see what's to come with Miramax and the Halloween franchise. I think, obviously, I'm almost certain they won't bring David back, but if they did, I would love to see. No, they can't bring him back because he killed them off in the story. I don't know. I'm so torn. I think, sitting here and talking about this alone it's kind of bittersweet. And it reminds me of my conversation in the last episode about the Scream franchise. Like, I would totally be okay if we never got another Scream movie. The same with Halloween. I think there's so many movies, there's so many different iterations and versions, and kind of, we've seen Michael so many times over the years. He's had different masks, he's had different victims, he's had the same victims, you know. But I just feel if you're going to do it, then it has to be done right. And if it's not going to be done right, then don't do it. And that's just my take on it. With the reboot in mind and the new TV series, it opens up a lot of questions. And it opens up a lot of fan kind of, how do you say, imagination. There's many people in the series that survive. There are many people in the series who we've never seen again. For example, Halloween H2O. If they wanted to go down the route of the original timeline, we could see Laurie's son. Or if they wanted to go down another timeline, we could see Jamie Lloyd come back. I would love to see Danielle Harris back in the series and franchise, in the sense of she's so good at what she does and she's so underrated in horror. I was actually really shocked that they didn't bring her back for the original series. The original reboot for David Gordon Green's franchise. I don't know. I'm just very torn. I think a reboot is inevitable. I'm just wondering if we're going to get new sort of legacy sequels, or if we're going to get an actual full-fledged reboot from the beginning, something along the lines of Rob Zombie. Which I will say, it's very disappointing that Rob kind of, I don't want to say gave up on the series after the second one, but I would have loved to see more of Scout Taylor Compton as Laurie Strode. I'm a huge Scout Taylor Compton fan. Shout out to Scout. I think she played Laurie immaculately. We got a new age Laurie that still kept true to the original that Jamie Lee Curtis has set in stone. We got a young girl who was scared of something she had no idea that was going on. And he just kind of lost me with the second movie. I think bringing in the whole like ghost of Michael's mom and all that stuff, like I said, I really hate when we humanize a villain. And I think giving him this touching backstory of how he just missed his mom and wanted a connection with her again, and she was coming to him as a ghost. It was just really, really silly. And no disrespect to Rob and his vision, no disrespect at all. You know, every person, every creative, every artist is entitled to their own perception and their own viewing of a work of art, right? Just because how I see a painting doesn't mean that you see it the same way. And I applaud that. I applaud that he had the gall and the guts to take it in a different direction. I'm just not a real big fan of humanizing the villain and then villainizing the hero, you know. And I think taking Laurie and putting her into this like hyper traumatized setting and mindset was kind of the downfall of the second movie for me. I would have loved to see her be traumatized. Obviously, it's something that you don't just get over in one night, one day, 1 year. But I think it went a little too far. And I don't know, because then at the same time it was very Rob Zombie, and that's what he does, right? He pushes the limit, and there's really nothing you can say to him that will kind of change his mind, because I'm pretty sure that he had other visions for this project. I think at the end of the day, for the Halloween franchise, a TV series would be very interesting. I don't believe it's necessary, but who am I, right? I'm just a guy with a podcast. I will say right before I end this episode that I'm a Halloween fan, always have been, always will be. I will watch the 1978 Halloween every year on Halloween night religiously. I just want it to be handled carefully. These series and these franchises and these iconic horror villains have been around us for so long, so many years, and we've seen them be mishandled. We've seen production companies and directors and people come in and just really ruin something that's so beloved. So all I will say is, if it's gonna happen, let it happen right. Let it be organic. If we're gonna reboot it, find someone who still gives Laurie what made Laurie who she was. And then let's see where it goes from there. I think that's it for the second episode. I know it's a little shorter, but I will be having another one next week. It's going to be a Christmas episode for everyone celebrating the holidays. I'm excited. I will see you guys soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to rate, follow. I don't really know what you do on these things when it comes to subscribing, but I'll be releasing new episodes every Tuesday. And yeah, I hope you guys stay tuned. There's a lot coming up. And that's it for the final pod, season 1, episode 2, The Shape of Evil.